before. I think everyone else who is here today, Yazan, you've met everyone on the call today, haven't you, apart from Emma? So while Yazan is trying to contact Mohammed, Emma, could you please introduce yourself to everybody? I know you from the autoethnography research group, but if you could please tell everyone else what brings you to the call, Emma.
Hi, yes, I'm Emma in not so sunny Leicester in the Midlands in England. And yeah, Leicester is famous for a football team. I don't know much about football myself, but Leicester had a famous story where they went from the underdog to like the bottom of the league to winning the whole F1 Premiership or whatever it was in 2016. So it became quite a famous story. And I guess I say that because I speak with a very Leicester accent. In Leicester, we spell the ERs with an A at the end of every word. So instead of Leicester, I say Leicester, and that's a quite common thing in where I'm from. And I guess I am like. So I speak with this very working class accent from Leicester, and I guess that's a word of that. I'm sorry. It's not echoing now. Anyway, So anyway, short of the story is that's part of my identity. I guess is very working class, but and I'm also interested in that kind of survival story. Of that survival story sort of having that really strong impact, and so not just the Leicester story, it can be relevant for all different kind of walks of life, I guess, what people are here today talking about. So I'm very intrigued by learning different stories, not just my own. And I'm doing a PhD at the University of Leicester, specialising in lived experience of disability. And I'm very interested in how also disability is in different parts of the world as well. So that's me in a bit of a nutshell.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Emma. Wonderful. Now, Yazan, there are several people on the call that you haven't met before. They're new to the call, including one of my students, Ala. Ala, welcome to the call. We had Amr last week, and Ala was in the same class about 13 years ago as Amr. So, Ala, wonderful to see you again after all this time. And Ala was one of my star students. I'm very proud to have him on the call.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really good to see you too. It's been a really long time. Yeah, I'm Ala. I think I studied I think it was 15 years ago now. So yeah, quite some time ago. But yeah, I'm a software engineer. I'm based in London. My background is Algerian, so North African, so Arab descent. Yeah, I'm not sure how much further I should speak about myself, but that's like a quick intro to myself. It's good to meet all of you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Ala. Yazan, if you could please just introduce yourself, or Emma, and I think there's a couple of, Ala, you haven't met. I think all the others.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry of all of you, like the older one and the new ones, Ala and Emma. Okay, let me introduce myself. So I'm Yazan. I study engineering. I used to study engineering in Gaza. Actually, now I'm a genocide survivor. I have I lived 5 months during that war in Gaza, and now currently I'm living in Egypt, in Cairo. And now I'm trying to support my country, trying to develop myself, develop my skills, and just talk about the case of Palestine.
Mm-hmm. And the Phoenix Rising is your creation. It's the thing that you are investing your time and energy into, isn't it?
Yeah, Phoenix Rising is the project that I'm working on, and it's the main idea of what we are doing right now. So we are talking about Phoenix Rising, which is the idea of Gaza, that it can raise itself from death. So that is the concept of Gaza and concept of surviving, as Miss Emma has said. So I have survived the war many times, and now I'm currently in Egypt. And Gaza have, like I can say, survived war many and many years ago. So every war, it can rebuild itself again. So that's the concept you are talking about, surviving, creative thinking, and these things.
Okay, Mohammed, your camera is turned off, so I'm not sure if you're there or not. I'll call on you when you're back on. Oh, okay, wonderful. Mohammed, if you could please tell us what's happening right now, because you're actually in Gaza. If you could just give us an update and as a way.
Yeah. So firstly, in the beginning, I wanna say hi and greet everyone here, especially the new people here, Ada and Imam. Well, right now, nothing actually new. The genocide is still continue. Netanyahu yesterday, I guess, he said that he will not like finishing this war, and he's planning to occupy Gaza forever. And he showed a new map for the for Palestine and Israel as the West Bank. It will be an Israeli land, and this is actually not new, because before that, I guess one of the government, the Israeli government member, his name is this Smotrich. He before that he published a map for Israel, including all of Palestine, the historical map for Palestine, and parts of Jordan and parts of Egypt. And this is actually not a new idea of the Israeli, as they are, I can say, they are like a cancer. They are trying to every time to steal more land, more and more and more, as a cancer, literally as a cancer. So the situation here is still killing more Palestinians every day, massacres every day. And unfortunately, every time we just losing hope, day after day, we losing hope for ending this genocide, or can back to our home, our land, Gaza, the north of Gaza, as I'm right now in the south of Gaza, Gaza Strip. So the situation is more terrible than before.
Okay, so of course, Mohammed, we're all very, very sorry to hear that, and this is why the Phoenix Rising, we talk about the ashes. We know that there is very few resources, but we do still have, like when we talk about creativity, we say creativity is creating something from nothing, and when there's ashes, that is a metaphor for the nothing. The ashes is nothing, but we still have friendships, we still have communities, and all of you, in some way or form, you're all learners. You're all, maybe not formal students, but we're all, each one of us is learning. And when we are learning, we often don't tap into our innate knowledge. When we're in formal education, especially, we rely on knowledge from external sources rather than tapping into our inner innate knowledge, that inner innate intelligence, which tells us how to survive, which kind of it propels us into that survival mode, as it were. And out of that, friendships, even in the most tragic circumstances, friendships are still formed, communities are still formed. And Mohammed, you've talked about this already, because moving from 4 or 5 times now, in every place, that you have formed friendships, you have formed communities with new people. So that's the innate wisdom that we have, I suppose, that we need to draw on in order to create value from nothing. So I know, because there's quite a few of you in the call today, could you please raise your hand when you have got a comment, rather than me putting you on the spot and saying, what do you think about it? It would really be helpful if you raise your hand so that I know who's ready with a comment, rather than me just kind of like, highlighting somebody. But is there somebody who wants to make a comment about that, of, how do we create value from nothing? How do we use friendships? How do we use this community? Because we can see that something is happening here. This call started with myself, Mohammed, and Yazan a couple of months ago. And now look, every time it's expanding. And the fact that it's expanding is because there's something here which is palpable. There's something here which is, it's bigger than each individual. A community is much larger than the sum of its individual components. So there's something happening here which is more powerful than each one of us in isolation. So who has got a comment about, tapping into this innate wisdom and using the power of friendships, the trust, the loyalty, all of these things? We don't have to be taught about loyalty, because in a way, loyalty is inbuilt. We know that loyalty is one of the things that are required for a sustainable community. What else? What do you think that a community can do in terms of creating a creative environment that is conducive to adding value and making something from nothing? Yazan, do you have any comments about it? Yeah, go ahead, Yazan.
Actually, I want to mention something recently is happening to me actually here in Egypt. Actually, I've been volunteering in an organization here called Life of Blood organization. So we help Palestinian here in Egypt, especially Gazan from Gaza, and injured people. So about creating communities and creating value. It's the idea of creativity. I have met a lot of people from all around the world. For example, people from South Africa, people from USA, from Canada, from Egypt, from Iraq. Actually, all these people, we have shared a lot of ideas. We have a lot of thoughts to share. But the concept is that we all want to support Gaza. We all want to help. So just meeting these people and seeing the amount of effort they are putting to just help people, to just try to give to that community was so impressive for me. So I'm so happy to share that thing with you. So yes.
Is that the good news you were talking about, Yazan?
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of more details actually.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the group about that project?
No, for now, no.
Okay, wonderful. So who else has got, so Chris, you know about the power of communities because you've been building communities for a while. How is it that a community can create a platform for creativity to arise? Chris?
Well, they say whatever the problem, community is the answer. And we always look for top-down solutions or blueprints or people building models. But if you explore what's there in the community, you'll find, I mean, the word you used was wisdom, but there's really pockets of specialist knowledge. And if they can be brought together with other specialisms and other pots of knowledge, you find you created a new entity. And so the first place to look is at the grassroots and not on official bodies, bureaucracies, organizations. It's the people on the ground, and that's where the answer usually is.
Okay, right. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Chris. Orlando, you also, when your family moved to Birmingham from Jamaica, you know that naturally a community was formed. Okay, you didn't need to, no one needed to teach your family or other families how to build that community. In the same way, my own family, there were about 30 families that formed a community. No one taught them how to form the community. It just happened organically, and they were able to establish themselves, and it's a thriving community. How did your family create that community and what arose from that creation of the community. Orlando, you're on mute. Yeah, you need to unmute yourself. Sorry, Orlando, your microphone, you need to unmute your microphone. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yes, I came to the UK as a reluctant traveler. I was summoned to come here by my parents, who I had long forgotten. They left when I was a wee child, and I was in my teenage years when I was told that I had to come to the UK. Whilst I was in Jamaica, I started to get involved in music. They wanted me to do my studies, but I was more interested in music. And the people who were looking after me as a guardian reported to my parents in the UK that I was going off the rails, and they were fearing for me, and so they wanted my parents to send for me to come to the UK. I wasn't quite ready for that move. I was getting involved with music and making quite an headway, I thought. But being an obedient child, I decided to make the crossing and come. And when I came to the UK, I formed a group at school, a group carrying on from what I was doing in Jamaica. And it was a group at school, but there was nothing really much happening. And then I met a young chap from Jamaica who was doing the same thing, and we started a group. And so my creativity at that point was in the activities with the group, and that went on for quite a few years. We made records, and we went on tour and all sorts of things, but it wasn't quite successful. And so I took a job. I took a job at the car plant in Longbridge, and I met a friend who was from not long out of Loughborough University, and we became very good friends. And he was into politics, and I joined him in politics, and I almost became a shop steward at Longbridge, but I didn't. I stayed on the outside, and that was quite creative in a way, because that's where I got my politics from, and my left wing politics from at the car plant, and my creativity took me through to understanding how to navigate my way in a system that was meant for workers, but in a way, some workers were excluded, and I found myself excluded from that. So my creativity has been quite diverse, and I'm still pursuing things in a creative way. I'm into writing now, and I've written a poem, several poems, as a matter of fact, that I will share with you at some point. So my creativity has been quite diverse, and I'm still pursuing it.
Okay.
Long may it last.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Orlando is a very creative person. He does write poetry. He is a musician, as he said. And one thing that, you know, that you might kind of like think this is a little bit off the wall, but Orlando is also a vegetarian like myself. And when I remember when I asked you, Orlando, why are you a vegetarian? And you said, because I worked in a slaughterhouse. Do you remember that, Orlando? You said you worked in a slaughterhouse and that turned you off meat forever, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was after I left Longbridge, I took a job as a florer on the building site, and the company I was working with, they specialized in flooring for the meat industry, and we did. My job was to repair floors and lay floors along with 3 other guys, and we had a job to repair some floors at a slaughtering place, abattoir. That's the name, abattoir. And when I turned up, I was appalled. Up until then, I ate meat just like anybody else. And when I saw what took place in that situation, I decided that I couldn't continue eating meat. And actually, my first business years after that was in the food industry, and I opened a vegetarian restaurant. And that's another story. I'll share with you another time. But yes,
Orlando, thank you. I was just waiting for someone else to raise their hand, and Allah has kindly raised his hand, so I know I'm not pouncing on somebody. Go ahead, Allah.
Hey.
I know you're a great storyteller and you have a very interesting life, but let's go to Allah. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was just listening to Orlando's story, and kind of thinking about your question that you asked about how can these kind of platforms, sorry, wait, what was the, what was I going to say? Yeah, like how can these kind of platforms for communities be created to kind of harbor creativity? I'm listening to Orlando's stories, and the other stories I'm hearing. It's I think the best thing that governments can do, or the best thing that people can do, is to allow people to connect. So I think whether it's Gaza, whether it's trying to be a vegetarian, or whether it's moving to a new place like myself, where I've not recently, but last year I moved up to Birmingham, and I knew nobody here. And the best thing that I found is just having a platform, maybe something like Facebook, that allows you to connect to other people that have similar problems in an easy way. And maybe to Mohammed or Yazan, who are previously Palestinian citizens, or they used to live in Gaza, having the internet and having the ability to connect with you, Jezvir, online. These kind of methods and these solutions that are available to all of us today just makes it a lot easier for us to build our own little communities based around the problems that we face each day. So yeah, I think that's what I'd say for now.
So true, Allah, because during war, I think that one of the strategies is to destroy the communities, is to destroy the relationships, because once you've destroyed the relationships and the communities, the spirit of whoever it is that you're attacking, the spirit is weakened, you see. So strategically, it's even more serious than bombs being thrown, because when you undermine these relationships, when you undermine the communities are disintegrated, then what is left, you see?
Yeah.
And yeah, does anybody else have a comment about that? But what the other thing that, Ala, when you were talking, it reminded me that I've heard somewhere that it's the countries or the communities where there is the highest level of trust that you can say these are really civilized societies. The more highly civilized a society is, the higher the level of trust. And to give you an example about that is, like, for example, when I go shopping in Sainsbury's, I don't have to leave my bag at the door because they think I'm going to steal something if I take my bag in with me. But I have been to a country where to go into a shop, you have to leave your bag with the security person at the door. And you know, that I was like shocked. It's like that, at that very low level of trust. It's like, you know, so they're just assuming that somebody is going to be a thief rather than allowing them, you know, to just walk in freely. Whereas here, when we go to the supermarket, there is, I know, like, there's cameras, you know, like to check that you are paying for everything that you say that you've bought, but there's self-service tills where we can check out our own food. Whereas compared that with the other country, where it wasn't simply like self-service or paying them, even the bag has to be left at the door. That's a very low level of trust. So the highest level of trust, I think, again, in another country that I haven't visited that other country, but I've heard that, like, when you go to get the tube or when you go to get the train, they just trust you that you've paid for it. There's not those machines that you have to put your ticket in to prove that you've paid before you can go in. You can just go in. I live in Northfield here in Birmingham, and from Northfield to the city centre, there are no kind of barricades, there's no barriers. They just trust us to have paid for the ticket to get into the centre of Birmingham. So yeah, so communities are based on trust, and I do, you know, like I said, with all those examples, it does seem to be that where there is the highest level of trust, then we can say that's a strong community, you know, regardless of like how evolved it is or in different ways. But at least we can say that is a very strong community because there's a very high level of trust. Nikita, you have your hand raised. Thank you. Anyone else? So please raise your hand so that I'm not, and Noor, and okay, excellent. So now people are raising their hands. So go ahead, Nikita.
Thank you for sharing that, Jasveer. I think that was really interesting when you mentioned about trust, because I was thinking about sort of India, and then I was also comparing it to Dubai, where I've grown up, and the levels of trust and how there are some supermarkets where they expect you to like store your bag and you get a token and things like that. But yeah, I think just listening to everyone's stories has been really interesting. I really like what the point that Yazan raised about sort of that sense of shared values, and even what Allah said about the power of connection. Because in my experience, I am leading on a project at university. I'm from the University of Warwick, and we're currently doing a project to create classrooms in Coventry that are built on creative confidence. And to do this, we are sort of writing and launching a storybook for young kids, for 5 to 7 year olds, so primary school kids, supported by learning resources that will help them feel confident in their creative expression. And I'm working on this with a group of students at university. And I think what was really interesting was that none of us came into this project with sort of prior experience in writing, illustration, or publishing. So none of us had any idea whatsoever of what it would be like to do a project like this. We had some sort of voluntary experience of having worked in schools, of having worked with young people, but we didn't really have the technical expertise, if you will, to get things done, or to know what happens when and at what stage, and the right people to talk to. But I think what was really interesting is, as we went further along the project, we sort of realized and reflected and connected with each other and ourselves a lot more, so we were having conversations on sort of what would we have needed as 5 to 7 year olds growing up, and how our creativity was stifled growing up by the education system that we were exposed to. And everyone comes from different parts of the world. There's people who have sort of switched countries and sort of experienced different education systems. They have that sort of dual lens of having experienced different forms of, you know, their creativity either flourishing in the education system or being sort of shunned. So I think the fact that all of us were able to have that sense of connection and that shared experience of like, yeah, I've felt this too, when someone has pigeonholed me and told me I'm not good enough at this form of creative expression, and that was something I internalized, and then someone else would be like, yeah, I felt this too when I was 5 years old or when I was 12 years old. And I think we've used that sense of shared experience as a source of innate wisdom, if you will, to guide the book and the story that feels most authentic to all of us. And hopefully, because it feels authentic to a group of all of us, and these are people none of us had met each other before, and we all come from sort of different walks of life and different backgrounds and sort of different ways of being brought up in different countries as well, in different education systems. I think that the strength of that lies in the fact that the story will speak to a wider audience, rather than if I were to write it, then it might just speak to like kids like myself or with like similar experiences. But the fact that it's written by a diverse set of people, and there's that sense of diversity and creativity that Orlando was talking about as well. So yeah, that's basically what I had to share.
Yeah, Nikita, because they call that collective genius. There's actually a term for it. They call it collective genius because it's it's like, you know, when you team up with other people, it becomes much bigger than the individual wisdom. So you tap into that collective wisdom, as it were. Go ahead, Noor, you have your hand raised.
Thank you all. Just a whole bunch of thoughts coming in my mind with the conversation around trust and community. And I'm also, you know, wondering, maybe Yazan and Muhammad can speak to this, but I've recently come across a lot of literature and conversation around the concept of samud, Yazan and Muhammad in particular, and how this whole idea of samud, perseverance, or being strong and having this kind of strength. I don't like to use the word resilience. I would rather say this ability to stay true to resistance in Gaza are greatly tied also to a sense of community and trust that the Palestinian people have in each other and themselves, right? And I think that that piece of it is really important, because everyone who is directly experiencing the genocide, or has, you know, like Yazan calls himself a genocide survivor, it has a really important, like, the role that community plays when you're in a circumstance like that is so dynamic and entirely based on trust. When, you know, there is a shortage of food and water and very little for a lot of people to share, or when everyone reaches out to dig into the rubble, and then to do it over again the next day. This whole idea of samud, I think, is so centered in faith, identity, and community. And I don't think it is possible without an intrinsic trust that people have within their communities, which leads me to another thought about myself. Like, I'm in the United States, and yes, I belong to a demonized and marginalized population. I'm visibly brown, I'm visibly Muslim, visibly woman. So very intersectionally marginalized. And I ask myself this question, what is my level of trust in this community that I live in? And I would say very little. My answer would be very little trust. And it's making me think about what Jasveer was saying about civilization and its intersection with trust. And, on face value, one might say the Western world symbolizes civilization. But to me, if that is hugely untrue. We don't represent humanity, and there is no civilization without intrinsic humanity and empathy. And because I would then argue that while we might have made technological or capitalistic advancements, we have completely destroyed a sense of community and therefore trust by that logic, right? Because I don't feel in a position of being able to trust people, the government, except people who are actively speaking up against the violence that is there. And then I'll stop after a sweet little story. Yesterday, my 5-year-old, she's in kindergarten, and I recognize the privilege in all of this. I recognize the privilege in having a 5-year-old who has all her limbs and is able to go to kindergarten. I recognize the privilege, and this privilege collides with the grief that we experience through social media. But she came home yesterday and she asked me a question. She said, "What does kindness mean to you?" She asked me that. She said, "What does kindness mean to you?" And I looked at her because it was a surprising question to phrase it like that. And she said, "My teacher asked that today of everyone in class, what does kindness mean to you?" And then before I could answer, she said, "Kindness means to me sharing my stuff." Like that is what the word means to her. And then we both started talking about what other ways, represent kindness, lending a hand, playing with someone, all of those things, right? Many, many things. And there was a hope in all of that, in my mind, that she is a part of a community that she can trust in the safe space of her classroom. But I honestly I know that joy is resistance, but it's so hard to find joy in these moments, when at the same time I know that, a child yesterday, a 4-year-old, was a part of an airstrike and she had her rollerblades on, or a school was targeted, so it's like, I think our trust is shattered by these macro spaces that we are in while we try to sustain it in the smaller communities within which we operate.
Okay, thank you, Noor. I'm going to go to Yazan. I'll come back to you. So Yazan, what's your response to what Noor's just shared?
Yeah, actually, she talked about the most important point, like which is the idea of sumud or resistance. So actually, the resistance in Gaza can teach us how to trust in ourselves. First of all, ourselves, then to trust the process and to trust God. Actually, people in Gaza, like, they have faced the worst condition we can say on earth in the last century. So actually, there's a lot of bad things happening, lack of food, lack of water, lack of everything. There could be like airstrikes, bombing universities or schools, hospitals. So the trust in the communities is so bad, like in Gaza, to trust like the governments, to trust the people. But actually, the Gazan people, they need trust to themselves, actually, to keep themselves surviving. So the neighbor should trust his neighbor to just help each other to survive. And actually, they think to trust yourself. I have learned that from my journey in Gaza toward Egypt. Actually, like the situation in Gaza, or the war conditions, like made me a stronger person. And that's like, it's not just a word. Actually, I felt that for real. I felt that. Like the concept is, I have faced the worst genocide in the last century. I faced the worst conditions any human can feel it. So nothing will be hard for me after that. Everything will be easy for me. I can do anything. I can survive any condition. So going through Egypt to just to see my life, to build my life again. So just everything is gonna be easy. Nothing is gonna be hard. I will trust myself. I'll trust my God, because everything happens for a reason. That's what I believe. So me being in Gaza was for a reason, and getting me out of Gaza, like evacuating me from Gaza, was for a reason. And I believe I will find that reason, or I'm working on that reason. So I have to trust the process. I have to trust my effort I am putting now to just deliver the message of Palestinian, to just deliver the message of Sumud or resistance. So we will always be resistance, even in resisting, even in Gaza, in Egypt, and anywhere in the world. Resistance is like, it's not just in Gaza. We can resist in talking, in poems, as Mr. Ronaldo do, and writing and speaking, in every way. So we have trust is the most important part in surviving in this life.
Yes, and you see, yes, and it's like no one taught you how to survive. It's there innate. That intelligence is there within you, and it's your faith. You trust in your faith, and that trust is intrinsic. You know, no one tells you how to trust. You just know how to trust. You just know what is right, not right for you, right?
Yes, exactly, because we are trying to survive. It's not like it's not a luxury. As I said before, it's not a luxury. We have to see, like, can say doing something wrong will be a danger for us. So we will be so careful in taking decisions and every step. So it's a matter of living or dying. So of course we will be so careful.
Okay, great, thank you. Allah?
Thanks. I kind of want to go back to something that you mentioned, Jezvia, about, you know, disintegrating communities, and it's something that kind of resonated with me, because it's interesting. I think you know, communities that are trying to solve problems. I found, or you know, I think in my opinion, they are proportionate to the size. So the size of the community is proportional to the size of the problem. So I think, you know, as the problem grows, and you know, you can think about examples of, you know, Gaza, and that kind of being like a global problem. So it requires a global community for a solution to really try to be found. And you know, whether, you know, thinking back to COVID, for example, that also became a global problem. So it requires a global community. And I think if you want to try to prevent a solution from being found, you need to try to restrict the size of that community. You need to try to prevent that community from growing. And you know, one of the ways that I think, you know, maybe Israel, or you know, there's plenty of other examples of this being done, but one of the ways that can be done is to you know, like Israel cut off internet, for example, and that prevents people from trying to create this global community to try and solve this global problem. So it just becomes really difficult for the people facing this issue to really try to connect with people that might be able to help them solve their problems. You know, whether it's, you know, shutting off Egypt from being able to give aid into Palestine, and all of these different things that try to really restrict the size of the community, and that makes it really hard for people to come to a solution. So it's definitely interesting to see, but it's good to hear, you know, Yazan, and the mentality that you have about actually trying to be resilient and trying to be the resistance. Yeah, it's really inspirational.
Yes, thank you, Allah. You're absolutely correct. It's about the size of the community, and it's also about who is allowed to become a part of that community. So for example, in the UK, academics are silent. There's a reason why academics are silent. So there are those barriers to who can be part of what kind of community, you know. So you know, Chris, you know about like the tea houses of the past, you know, like, you know, that, you know, so much of that social disruption takes place when people get together in tea houses over a cup of coffee or over a cup of tea. Dissent, you know, I think there was the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. He was talking about dissent being at the grassroots level, you know, just simply about people being able to collect in particular spheres. Habermas, one of the German philosophers, he talks about the public sphere. The public sphere is the space where communities can gather. Here we've created a public sphere virtually. You know, we're in different countries, whatever, so we can't have a common space where we can come together and have these conversations. So we've created a virtual public sphere, and these public spheres are political because things happen. You know, communication will be disrupted if it seems to be powerful. If it's not powerful, it will be ignored. But if it is, if it demonstrates like there is power in it, then attempts will be made to disrupt that conversation. So Chris, this is the pattern that very often takes place, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, with Gaza, I mean, as it's being pointed out, it's to do with geopolitics as well as a situation that's taken place in the Middle East, and it's bringing people together. And as you say, it's action and reaction. So it's creating a new kind of community to resist what's going on. On a geopolitical level, I mean, America isn't really interested in the Middle East anymore because it's self-sufficient in energy. And anyway, the energy that it's self-sufficient in is fading because we're all turning over to electricity and green energy. So the world is changing like that. Netanyahu knows that America hasn't got a material interest in the Middle East, so he's trying to drag America into a war by provoking Iran and trying to create a situation where America has to take some action and come in support of Israel. So there's all these factors taking place. But I'd like to just comment a couple of things that from ancient British authors. One of when Alan was talking about connection, the author who called E.M. Foster, who was a novelist, but he's also a commentator on cultural matters. His mantra was only connect, and in terms of creativity, it is making these connections that weren't there before and creating something new. And also, when Noah was talking about kindness, the British author Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, which is quite a celebrated English novel, he was quite an intellectual and spent his life studying a lot of aspects of the world. And they said to him, what lesson have you to give to us? And he said, I'm embarrassed. He said, because after all my years of learning and research, the only thing I can say is be a little kinder to other people. Now, if we look at a human brain, then kindness springs from the higher activities of our brain, and the reptile part of our brain, which is there in terms of aggression and fear, it supersedes that. And so if we can live a life of kindness in the world, it's representing the higher aspects of humanity and human civilization. But it doesn't take much to bring that down and trade in fear and division and try and set people against one another. So in that kind of divide and conquer. So there's quite a lot of wealth in what's being discussed this evening, and it just sets off a few thoughts about what the situation in Gaza is throwing up.
That's right. And this kindness comes from our hearts. And when there's fear, what closes down is the heart, isn't it? It just seems to shut the shutters are closed, and there's little room for that kindness to come out. But kindness, when we're in a position of privilege, I can be very, very kind because I'm safe. I'm in a safe country. I don't need anything at the moment, so I can be abundantly kind. But put me in a situation where I'm experiencing what Mohammed's experiencing, I'm not sure how kind I would be. And the reason I'm not calling on Mohammed is because he's texted me to say that his internet connection is very poor and he can't hear what's being said. So I'll bring him in at the end. But in the meantime, we just have about 7 minutes. So Preet and Emma, do you two want to make any comments? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have anything to say to what's been said? And then I'll bring Orlando in because he's got his hand up.
I don't have much. I think I was happy to listen.
Okay.
I'm happy with what everyone said. Because I've been thinking about my own experience and how it relates to what's kind of been said. And from my perspective, I've never really actively thought about creating a community. It's always been something I needed, because I believe that you can't really live life without having a community, without having whether that's your own community, like your friends or family, or the wider community, because there's always going to be this, I think, emptiness of wanting to connect with others, or have people with like-minded and have people that align with your values, as well as to be able to trust people, and being from a Sikh community, like servitude or serving others is like a big component, and being raised with those values, I feel like I'll always try to lead a life in that sense, which also relates with kindness, but overall I think it's I feel like for myself, I've never been in a situation where I've had to seek community, or like that's like I had to share or had to, my kindness needed to be questioned. So I feel like there's not much I can contribute other than just listen and just be present.
Yeah, and the presence itself is is an act which is powerful. Yazan, you have something to say?
Yes. So talking about communities and like creating value. Like yesterday, I've been in an event to packing like 300 bags or food bags for Palestinians in Egypt here. So the thing that we have here.
Yeah, the internet connection is a bit poor.
On ground, like face to face. So I have met people from all around the world, as I said. So
yeah, Yazan, I'll come back to you. Let me go to Orlando because Orlando's got his hand raised, and then we'll come back to Yazan.
I met people from South Africa, from Canada, from Tajikistan. So just meeting these people and seeing their
yeah, Orlando, just a couple of minutes, and then we'll go back to Yazan to end the call. Go ahead, Orlando.
It's the question of kindness. I think I sometimes wonder if the human condition is based on distrust and lack of kindness, because the world as it is, and I remember Chris saying last week that we need to look at things as they are, and probably not the way we want it to be. And the way I see the world is that there's a lot of mistrust in the world, and kindness begins in small groups, in small communities, and where you can express yourself without fear to individuals in the small group, in a small community. But when you venture out in the wider world, you start to experience unkind things, and in terms of the Gaza situation, I don't know, but I would expect that they were more kind to each other before the intervention of the colonialists, when the lack of respect and the fear started to emerge in the colonial situation. And now that they're in this war situation, they are having to resort to kindness again to each other and looking out for each other. And in terms of the future for Gaza, I would like to see a Gaza where there is more community, there is more respect for each other, a Gaza that will have humanity, a Gaza that will be caring to each other. I don't know if that will happen, but that's what I would like to see.
Okay. And then finally, Yazan.
Yes, okay, thank you. So we were talking about like building communities. So for me, I was like the past 3 days we were visiting hospitals here in Egypt to visit Palestinians who were injured in this war. So the feeling of meeting these people, they were so happy to meet us. Like almost all of us were from Gaza. They have to meet people from Gaza for the first time since like maybe 4 months or 5 months. So they have a lot of trust for the community, because some of them started to cry. Some of them wanted to just have us for the whole day. So they have trust for that community. And during these events, I met the CEO of that organization. She's from South Africa, but now she's living in Canada. So she was telling me that she has some hate for the governments, especially USA, Canada, Emirates, because she lived in more than no, like that's why. She told me that because people from, for example, in Emirates or in USA or Canada, they are living good life. They have good life conditions. Everything is.
The internet connection is very, very bad now. Let me just bring Mohammed in. Mohammed, I know you haven't been able to
usually when you.
I don't think it's going to be possible.
Are living in good conditions.
Mohammed, are you still there? I know that you haven't been able to hear the conversation, but do you want to just come on and add a comment now, just to end the call, Mohammed?
Yes, I'm with you. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear most of this conversation. I didn't hear everything actually. But I'm not sure, maybe I guess he was talking about trusting in the community or something like this. Actually, I want to mention that for me, as living in Gaza, in this war, I can say that especially in this condition, we need to have this trust. I will not say about in the community as a Gaza Strip. I will say in more specific community as me, with my family, relatives, friends, and neighbors. We need this trust in every single detail in our life. We need it in, for example, to have water, as there's lake of water here in Gaza. We need it, for example, to have a place to stay in, because, for example, maybe we will in any second have to leave the place we are living right now. So we need another place. So if we don't have a trust in each other, we cannot find a place. I cannot trust in some people. Some people cannot trust in me. So I cannot find a safe place, or at least a better place to live, to stay in. For example, when I had to leave. So what I'm trying to say is, trusting in the community is so much important, especially in the difficult situation, when everything is lack or is not available. We need the trust, and we need to build the trust so that we can have what is need for us.
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. So trust and kindness is absolutely essential for survival. So everyone, it's 8:30. So we will meet again next week. I hope that most of you will be able to join us again next week. On the 18th, I will be in Germany, so we won't meet, and then we'll resume again in October. So Yazan, I know you had an interesting story, but let's hear about it next week, if that's all right with you, Yazan.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for your kindness and your presence, and the trust that you're creating in building this online community of support.
No, thank you very much.
you.
And
Thank you for
good to see you
having
again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Excellent. Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.